From a ghostly hitchhiker to a shadowy figure, here are 10 terrifying encounters that left police officers baffled and unable to find any explanations. 1. The ghostly hitchhiker in Chicago. In the 1970s, Chicago became home to one of the most puzzling and unsettling tales that police officers have ever encountered. The story centers around Archer Avenue, a road known for its connections to eerie happenings. Many police officers were left in shock after witnessing a ghostly figure that seemed to haunt the stretch of road near Resurrection Cemetery. The ghost, known as Resurrection Mary, appeared to be a young woman dressed in white, who would often ask for a ride from passing drivers. The sight of her made many officers and citizens stop in their tracks, and some even offered her a ride, only for her to vanish before they could reach her destination. This ghostly hitchhiker left many questions unanswered, as no one could explain how a person could disappear from a car. Police officers were called multiple times to investigate reports of a woman walking near the cemetery at night. When they arrived, there would often be no sign of her. Even those who gave her a ride were left baffled when she would disappear without a trace. The police could not dismiss these claims, as too many people had witnessed the same thing. The sightings continued for years, with each report adding more layers to the mystery of Resurrection Mary. 2. The Vanishing Woman of New York. In 1981, New York police officers encountered an equally perplexing and unsettling incident. On a quiet night, one officer noticed a distressed woman walking alone down the street. Concerned for her safety, he stopped to help. The woman told the officer that she had been attacked, which prompted the officer to radio for backup. But in the brief moment that he turned his attention away from her, the woman vanished without a trace. The officer was left standing alone on the street, with no evidence of the woman's presence. Even though she had seemed so real just moments before, this incident wasn't an isolated case either. Over the years, other officers reported similar experiences in the same area. Each encounter involved a woman in distress who would disappear before help could arrive. The repeated nature of these encounters led to speculation that the woman was not of this world. Despite extensive searches, the police were never able to find any trace of her. The case baffled investigators, who couldn't understand how a person could vanish so completely, and it became one of those stories that stayed with the officers who experienced it. 3. The creepy figure in the forest. In 2016, 2 police officers in Washington state found themselves in a situation that defied explanation. While patrolling a wooded area, they noticed a strange figure standing in the distance. They called out to the figure but received no response. The figure remained still, seemingly unaware of the officers' presence. As the officers approached, the figure suddenly disappeared into thin air. It was as if it had never been there at all. The officers later described the figure as tall and shadowy, with no discernible features. The unsettling part of this encounter was that the officers were not alone in witnessing the strange figure. Other officers had reported similar sightings in the same area, which only added to the eerie nature of the experience. Despite a thorough search, there was no evidence of anyone being in the area. The officers were left unnerved, unable to explain what they had seen. 4. The haunted police station in New Mexico. In 2008, a police station in New Mexico became the center of another strange and unexplained phenomenon. Officers at the station began to experience bizarre occurrences that left them questioning what was happening within their own building. It started with the sound of footsteps when no one was around, followed by voices that seemed to come from nowhere. Doors would open and close on their own, and objects would move without any visible force. The station's security cameras even captured footage of these strange events, but no explanation could be found. The police station had been built on the site of an old jail, which led many to believe that the paranormal activity might be connected to the spirits of former inmates. But despite investigations and attempts to find a logical explanation, the incidents continued. The officers who worked at the station grew uneasy, knowing that something beyond their understanding was happening around them. 5. The mysterious lights in Texas. In 2014, several police officers in a small town in Texas witnessed something in the night sky that left them questioning what they had seen. While on patrol, the officers noticed strange lights moving in a pattern that didn't resemble any known aircraft. The lights seemed to be moving with purpose, but not in a way that any human-made object could. The officers followed the lights for several miles, hoping to get a closer look or an explanation for what they were seeing. But just as suddenly as they had appeared, the lights vanished. The officers were left standing in the darkness with no explanation for the strange phenomenon they had witnessed. They reported the incident, but no official explanation was ever given. 6. The phantom figure in the abandoned house. In 2003, police officers in Detroit were called to investigate reports of strange noises coming from an abandoned house. When they arrived, they could hear footsteps and muffled voices inside the building, even though no one was supposed to be there. The officers searched the entire house but found no one. As they were about to leave, one officer reported seeing a shadowy figure standing at the top of the stairs. When he tried to approach the figure, it disappeared before his eyes. The officers conducted another search of the house but found no evidence that anyone had been there. The experience left them shaken, as the shadowy figure defied all logic and explanation. The house became known for its eerie occurrences, with more reports of strange noises and ghostly figures coming from those who dared to enter. The police officers who responded to that initial call were left with a mystery that they couldn't solve, and the abandoned house remained a place of fear for those who knew its story. 7. The disappearing man in the UK. In 1995, a police officer in a rural area of the UK responded to a call about a suspicious man seen wandering near a farm. When the officer arrived at the scene, he saw the man standing in a field. The officer approached the man, intending to question him, but before he could reach him, the man disappeared. The officer was left standing in the field, unable to explain how the man had vanished so quickly and without a trace. A search of the area revealed no evidence that anyone had been there. There were no footprints in the soft ground where the man had been standing, which only added to the mystery. The officer later learned that the farm had a history of paranormal activity, leading some to believe that the man might have been a ghost. 8. The poltergeist of the Chicago suburbs. In 1977, police officers in a Chicago suburb responded to a call from a family who reported strange occurrences in their home. The family claimed that objects were moving on their own and that they were hearing unexplained noises that seemed to come from nowhere. When the officers arrived at the home, they witnessed the phenomena firsthand. Furniture was being thrown across the room, and loud banging noises filled the air. But there was no one else in the house who could have been responsible for the disturbances. The officers returned to the house multiple times in an attempt to figure out what was happening, but they were never able to find a cause for the strange events. The family eventually moved out of the home, unable to live with the constant paranormal activity. The case baffled the police, as there was no logical explanation for what they had witnessed. 9. The mysterious voice on the radio. In 2012, a police officer in Ohio was patrolling a remote area when he heard a woman's voice calling for help on his police radio. The voice sounded distressed, but the officer couldn't identify the source of the transmission. He tried to trace the signal, hoping to find the woman who needed help, but no one was found in the area. The officer checked for any reports of a missing person or someone in danger, but there were none. The mysterious voice on the radio remained unexplained, and the officer was left wondering if he had experienced something paranormal. The voice was never traced, and no further reports of distress came in that night. The officer couldn't shake the feeling that something strange had happened, something beyond the normal scope of his job. The voice calling for help became another mystery that couldn't be solved, adding to the growing list of unexplained encounters that police officers face in their line of duty. The shadowy figure in the cemetery. In 2009, police officers in a small town in Tennessee were called to investigate reports of a suspicious person seen wandering in a local cemetery at night. When the officers arrived at the cemetery, they saw a shadowy figure moving among the graves. The figure appeared to be human, but something about it didn't seem quite right. The officers approached the figure, hoping to identify and question the person, but before they could get close, the figure disappeared right before their eyes. The officers were stunned. They conducted a thorough search of the cemetery, looking for any signs of someone hiding, but there was no trace of anyone. The ground was undisturbed, and there were no footprints to suggest that anyone had been there. The cemetery had long been rumored to be haunted, with locals sharing stories of ghostly apparitions and strange occurrences. Many believed that the shadowy figure the officers had seen was a spirit, perhaps of someone who had been buried there long ago. The incident remained unexplained, and the officers who witnessed the figure were left with an eerie sense of unease. The encounter in the cemetery became one of those stories that was shared among the town's residents, adding to the lore of the haunted graveyard. And this is all we have for today's episode. Don't forget to give this video a like and also smash that subscribe button while you're down there.